First, should the Prime Minister scrap planned changes to inheritance tax for farmers? We love your calls on this. My goodness, what a day yesterday. Thousands took part in protests to the changes which are going to be brought in by the government. And so far, the things that the government have done, which are controversial, they've not backed down on any of them. So it doesn't look like they'll back down on this. So what we've got here, and this is one of the classic sort of headlines, is farmer versus, it's so good, it's just a newspaper's dream, this, isn't it? Farmer versus Starmer. And if you'll remember, yesterday I was sent this email, and I sort of said, I went through it. This is producer Matt had sent me this, and I went through it, and my eyes glazed over. Give me one headline thing I need to know.
Jeremy, I sent you this yesterday. The headline is...
I couldn't read, it just went on too long.
The government think not many farmers are going to have to pay.
Right, let's freeze it. Matt's very clever. He's known as his brain to scale. He's known as two brains. And I thought, actually, I should do his email justice, OK? Because it's a very good explanation. So let's properly look at Matt's email. So they point out you can pass on your property at the moment as a farmer with no inheritance tax, and this will be 20%. Who will it impact? This is the crucial question. From April 26, farms worth more than $1 million will pay inheritance tax at 20%. OK. But there are some allowances that help. So everyone, including non-farmers, are exempt from inheritance tax up to 325 grand, and you then get an extra 175 grand if you leave it to your descendants. So you've got 500. If you add in a spouse there, two people combined could, if they're farmers, could pass on 3 million tax-free, and after that it's 20%, not 40%. The government says this will protect the small family farms, and they say there's only 500 estates affected. Some people have claimed as many as 70,000 farms could be impacted. HMRC figures show that roughly 100 are valued above 2.5 million. So this is actually a brilliant email from Matt. The key bit is here, that if you put two people together, two allowances of $1 million, and you add in the existing allowances, which we all get, the government says you get to 3 million. So thank you, Matt, for that brilliant email. He's not in today, actually. But let's have a look at what the kind of spokesman of the farmers, Jeremy Clarkson, has to say.
96% of the population of the UK does not pay inheritance tax. After this becomes law, 96% of farmers will.
Where have you got that figure from?
Who here, can I just ask, who here is going to be unaffected by these changes? No one.
Right. Where have you got the 96% figure
Well,
from?
you've got 96%.
Yeah.
Well, the same place that Rachel Reeves does, from the middle of her head.
What is your message to this government?
Please back down, please.
All right, so Clarkson's involved now. And there is a dispute about who it affects. And I think, somebody said to me, you can get a big combine harvester can cost £1 million. And once you put in the value of your herd and the farm kit, and if you're anywhere in the southeast of England, the land, you could get to 3 million or 2 million quite quickly. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem for the farmers, is that they are cash poor but asset rich. So that you mentioned the combine harvester. What about the piles of grain in their silos? I mean, they've got a lot of stuff, but that doesn't mean that can be easily liquidated in order to create money. Their profits are small. I think they're talking about a yield of 0.5 to 1% on there. And this is about, first of all, this is a breaking of a manifesto promise. Let's start from the beginning. Labour said to the rural communities, I will protect you and I will look after you. And a lot of new Labour MPs are from rural communities. Then you've got the concept of being able to pass down from father to son or mother to daughter, if you want to be modern. And this idea of it staying in the family. It's all right.
She turns to you and says modern. Hey, listen, Owen, I bet you don't like the idea of farmers being exempted from inheritance tax, per se.
Well, I mean, there is a specific issue to do with farming, which is you in terms of this is about bringing down through the family a specific food creating industry, which we all depend on. It's
Well,
quite a unique.
exactly.
No, but firstly, by the way, calling Jeremy Clarkson the spokesperson, I think is deeply problematic. The spokesperson is the National Farmers Union president, who has said themselves that the wealthy are using land as a tax dodge and that needs tackling. They don't like the way it's been gone about. Jeremy Clarkson there, who said, let me just quote him, he bought a 1,000-acre farm in the Cotswold. When he bought it, he said, land is a better investment than any bank can offer. The government doesn't get any of my money when I die. In that interview, the BBC journalist Victoria Derbyshire quoted back at him that he suggested he bought that farm to avoid paying inheritance tax. Now, what was annoying about that, by the way, he kept heckling her saying, oh, typical BBC. The BBC gave him his fortune, which he then used to buy a farm. I mean, the whole thing is absurd.
But he's using a platform in order to... I mean, he's the first person to say that, he earns a very nice, handsome salary on the side from his farming, but he's bothering to use the platform that he has to stand up
he's a genuine farmer now. But
the point I'm making is he specifically said this because he wanted to avoid paying inheritance tax. There's multiple other examples, I'm afraid. There's the Duke of Marlborough, James Dyson, who hoovered up 33,000 acres of land and got 1.8 million in farm payments from us, the taxpayer. There is an issue here.
They've paid more tax than most people.
I do agree that, and this has been raised actually by a farmer who's a member of the Patriotic Millionaires, they argue for rich people to pay more tax. He backs the principle. He thinks there is an issue, which is to do, for example, now, if £1 million would buy you only 40 hectares, which is far short of a viable farm.
Well, yes, exactly.
He points out.
Can I get a call on? Yeah, Roger in West Sussex, what do you think? It's basically almost an argument between Clarkson and the government now, Roger.
What I think is that there's a good case for going after farms which are being used to avoid inheritance tax and other reasons, but they're going for the wrong farms. They're saying farms over a certain value, they are obviously tax dodges, which is probably not the case. It's probably almost the other way around, that farms worth millions are probably properly working farms. And I think the way they should look at it is say, if you check on the probate form, if the executive check that so much of this land is farmland, the HMRC should say, prove it. Show us your records. Show us how much is laid out to agriculture.
Yeah, I think they could. Yeah, I mean, listen, if you buy a farm and you don't farm it, and you think that's going to give you a 0% inheritance tax, you've got another thing coming. The HMRC wouldn't be fooled by that. But I think it's more sophisticated than that, Roger. I think people with a lot of money will ensure the farm they buy is farmed, and you'd think it looks like a farm and it is a farm. And actually, if they do that, if they're producing food for this country, why not give them that exemption?
Well, if they are, but I'm pretty sure a lot of them aren't doing farming it, and certainly at anything like the level they could do.
Okay, so they're just holding property. All right.
How do you know that?
I'm not sure they can get away with that.
How can you make a bold respectfully, how can you make a bold statement like that? You've also got to remember, this was chucked at the farmers. So in terms of talking about HMRC, if you want to optimise the tax loophole, which says that, you pass on your assets to, as long as you survive for another 7 years after you've passed on the asset. Well, a lot of farmers work till quite an advanced age, and they haven't got enough lifespan that they can predict in order to take advantage of that.
Let's go to Brenda in Wiltshire. Hi, Brenda.
Good morning to everybody.
Morning.
I do think they should scrap the inheritance tax, because you can't have one rule for one and one rule for everybody else. And the royal family, Prince Charles and Prince William, or King Charles, they didn't pay inheritance tax.
Sorry, Brenda, when you say scrap it,
all the farms off the mother.
No, when you say scrap it, to be clear, you don't mean you mean scrap the exemption that farmers get.
Well, I don't think they should pay inheritance tax.
You don't think they should pay it?
The royal family pay inheritance tax from the Queen.
Brenda, I agree with you about the royal family, rich people. I mean, inheritance tax is demonised in this country. It's actually the fairest tax. It's a tax on the class system. It means that instead of the wealthy just passing on their wealth from...
I've never heard...
Hey, can I just finish at least one little argument?
Oh, you finished plenty.
All I was saying...
You've just started the show.
I've just said two sentences.
Literally been here like
2
25
sentences,
minutes.
and literally that's the end of it.
Okay, I understand.
All inheritance tax does is, because at the moment you have a class system where wealth is passed on from generation to generation, and that means that if you're born into wealth and privilege, you have huge advantages which other people in society don't have.
Yeah.
Now, enabling that tax is just the most kind of fair tax, I think, in existence. The issue with the farmers is it's different because it's about a specific industry.
Look at Angela's face. She wants to talk.
Just quickly, the National Farmers Union's president said that the wealthy are using land, as a tax dodge.
You have
said it.
Yeah, but Angela, is he right that if you're dead, you can't complain about tax?
It's an absolutely shocking, entitled, politics of envy kind of statement, Owen, and I am ashamed that you've said it. The reason being that you're presuming that people that have stuff to pass on are wealthy, that somebody's handed to them on a plate, that therefore why should they have the privilege of passing it on to their children? Lots of people, myself included, work very, very hard, and we hope that one of the reasons that we do that is that we will have something to gift to our children. We'll probably speak about the difficulties that this generation are going to have because of all the different competing pressures. So if I work hard and we own a house and, till 120, as we say, we shuffle off this mortal coil, I want my children to be able to have a share of that without them being, taxed till the pip squeaks.
Okay,
So
Angela, just quickly on that.
Can I take a break?
Wealthy.
Okay, just take a break and we'll come back, I promise, on this very subject and whether the farmers should keep this exemption from inheritance tax, and Clarkson was tough yesterday on the government. 0207 862 2222. See you shortly. So your calls on whether the government should scrap inheritance tax for farmers. 0207 862 2222. Got loads of calls. Jeremy Clarkson was on the protest. He says the government needs to back down on the issue. Do you agree with him? Mike in Bristol, do you agree with Clarkson?
I'm afraid no. And I think the point I'd like to make is that because of if you look at Clarkson, he's a classic example of, I think, a sort of tangential thing that's going on, like cottages in Cornwall. You've got family farmers who are sitting there looking at the books and thinking, do you know what? I could buy a villa in Barbados as the prices of farms goes up and up. So I think one of the reasons farmers are abandoning land is it's just worth such a lot of money.
Well, they're not, but the farmers on that protest, the reason they're on the protest is because they don't want to have to sell their farm, right? Because it's not just these people, it's not that just their living, it's the way they see their kids making their living as well. Isn't that right, Michael?
Well, yes, I'm just pointing out. I just thought I'd throw it in the mix.
Okay, all right.
If a farm's worth 5 million quid, you might be slightly more tempted to sell it. Than,
okay, thank you so much, thank you. I don't know if the world works like that. The funny thing about farms is that it could be worth 5 million, but you can only make, let's say, 60 grand profit out of it per year. There are farmers who don't even get minimum wage, but they're sitting on massive land. So that they're thinking if they get any kind of inheritance tax bill to pay, they can't pay it.
And they're also employers. And look at the hike
Well,
in
there's as
national
well.
insurance.
And there's something about fertiliser. Yeah, there's fertiliser tax as well.
This won't affect the vast. I do think it's important, just for the sake of accuracy.
Matt's email said, yeah.
The vast majority of farmers are not going to be affected.
Okay.
You might talk about some at the margins who shouldn't be affected, and that needs to be looked at. But overall, we're talking about the richest farmers, and I'd worry that the coverage is making it
exactly what they said when they brought income tax in the 1800s. They said, don't worry, most people won't pay it, and it's only going to be coming in for 5 years.
What's your definition of rich? What's your definition of rich?
Literally, a history... which do I answer first? How income tax develops or the definition of rich?
Let's go to Scott.
But just quickly on inheritance tax, because she made that point.
Yeah.
5% of people pay inheritance tax. The rich is 5%. I know you work hard, but so do carers. So do cleaners. And they work hard, they keep this country running, and they don't have this vast amounts of money. If you're in the richest 5% of people,
Which
you're
I'm
doing
not.
well, then you won't pay inheritance tax. So it's the end of the conversation.
Well, I don't know. Scott, I don't know, 5%? I'm not sure. Scott,
no,
5%,
it is the top 5%. That's the HMRC figures.
Yes, but that's today, not in 20
exactly.
years. Scott in Devon, hi.
Good morning, all.
So you've got many, many farmers in beautiful Devon, haven't you? What sort of mood are they in?
I do indeed, yeah. I'm fortunately surrounded by them.
Ah, so you're not a farmer yourself?
I'm not a farmer myself, no, but I certainly do feel for them at the moment.
Okay. Would you say fortunately surrounded or unfortunately surrounded?
No, fortunately. Fantastic
I'm glad. I was wondering why you said. Okay, so why do you think they should have this inheritance tax exemption?
Well, personally, I believe something far more sinister is going on here. I think if you look at what Labour have also promised that they're going to create, GB Energy. Now, for GB Energy, they need land because essentially it's going to be wind and solar farms. Now, I believe that what they're very likely to do is offer to take land in lieu of payment. Easiest way for them to acquire land for their solar and wind projects going forward, isn't it?
Oh, I see. But yes, so you'll have distressed sales, farmland will collapse in value, the government snaps it up and they build a load of windmills. Thank you, Scott. John in North Yorkshire, that would be twisted if that's the case.
I mean, there's no evidence for that.
No,
Can we just be clear? No evidence for that at all.
That would require Ed Miliband to ring Rachel Reeves and say, I've got an idea.
Yeah.
And
we can all offer opinions which are just far-fetched scenarios with no evidence, but I'm just saying there's no evidence for that.
Yeah, I know, you do all the time.
There's lots
such as what?
Well, we'll move on. I've not got enough time. I haven't got enough time for that one.
Okay, opinions and evidence are not always the same thing. John is in North Yorkshire. Hi, John.
Yeah, I think the government should keep this idea of taxing the farmers.
Okay, you think you like it?
Yeah, why should they only pay half of what everybody else would have to? And
they say, hang on, John, they say they produce food.
Well, Tesco sell it, but I mean, I don't see them getting an exemption.
Well, yes, I suppose there are other people who do things like, nurses and stuff, and they're not exempt. Many people do valuable things.
I remember when the farmers were paid millions, if not billions, not to produce food. And I didn't hear one of them complain then that they were being paid for nothing.
So these are the set-aside payments under the EU. Yeah.
Well, they have been hurt by the former Brexit we've pursued. There's no question about that. There's lots of crises facing British farming which need to be looked at. I don't really think a very small proportion of farmers overall paying inheritance tax is going to change.
But most farm food is sold to the domestic market, so how are they hurt by Brexit?
Because the margins are so small in farming that if you reduce any of their income, then it has a big impact.
Okay.
But if they're not,
what I saw of farmers during the Brexit campaign was a lot were in favour of Brexit. I can't find any who think it's working now.
No, they're very angry about it. There's no question about it. It's fine to support Brexit in the form we have, but most farmers have done very badly out of it. There's no question about that.
Okay, thanks, John. Mavis in Cheshire, hi.
Hi.
What do you think? It's interesting to see Jeremy Clarkson pop up yesterday.
Well, I'm with Jeremy all the way because, in my opinion, it's land grab. The government have got an ulterior motive here. The farmers. I started my first job when I was 15 on a farm. I'm 85 now.
Wow.
I went as a nanny to the baby of the farmer. Oh. That baby is still working a farm, is what was his father's and his grandfather's before him, and I know it's hard work.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. Once they start, I think it's maybe not even that they would have to pay the tax, it's that they fear they would, and that creates uncertainty.
Yeah, but that's why we shouldn't have hysteria, where you make people scared of something that's not going to happen to them. And a lot of the media in this country, let's just be honest, is very inflammatory and it doesn't stick to the facts. A lot of farmers think they're going to pay this, and statistically speaking, just factually speaking, they're not going to pay this. But now they've been told they will, and I think that's a problem.
So why is there so much public outrage? Because what happens if they have to start filleting away and slicing off part of their land in order to meet a huge inheritance tax bill, then the farm becomes not viable.
Okay.
Then we lose our local domestic fruit.
We have to take